Hey there, I'm estate planning attorney Paul Rabelais, and in this video I'm going to discuss how Minnesota state estate tax provisions do not allow for portability of the Minnesota estate tax exemption from the estate of the first spouse to die to the surviving spouse's estate. So Minnesota is one of only a handful of states that has their own estate tax. And for 2023, the Minnesota estate tax exemption is $3 million per individual or per estate. And the Minnesota estate tax ranges from 13% to 16%. Now, to address this issue of portability, let's look at the federal estate tax and then come back to the Minnesota estate tax. Now, to take a close look at the federal estate tax, which applies to estates of people who are domiciled all across America, we have to make some assumptions. Let's say Mark and Minnie are a married couple in Minnesota. They have a combined estate of $10 million, and let's say each of their estates is valued at $5 million. Let's say Mark dies in January 2026 when the federal estate tax exclusion amount is $7 million, after all the inflation adjustments and sunset provisions apply. Mark leaves his entire $5 million estate to Minnie. For federal estate tax purposes, Mark's bequest of his $5 million estate to Minnie qualifies for the federal estate tax marital deduction. So for federal estate tax purposes, Mark has a gross estate of $5 million, but his estate gets a deduction for anything left to his surviving spouse. He left the entire $5 million estate to Minnie, so Mark's net estate for federal estate tax purposes is zero, and no federal estate taxes due. That may all sound fine and dandy, but now Minnie has a $10 million estate, and if she dies with a $7 million federal estate tax exclusion amount, that excess $3 million will be subject to the 40% federal estate tax. Doesn't sound too good, does it? But under the federal estate tax law, after Mark died, Minnie could have made a portability election on Mark's federal estate tax return, IRS Form 706, and that would have allowed Minnie to not only have her own $7 million estate tax exclusion amount, but you would also be able to utilize Mark's $7 million federal estate tax exclusion amount that his estate did not use. So Minnie dies a year later, say in 2027, with a $10 million estate, but she will shield that from federal estate tax because she has $14 million of exclusions thanks to the portability election. Now let's look at the Minnesota estate tax provisions under the same fact pattern. Mark dies with a $5 million estate that he leaves in its entirety to Minnie. No Minnesota estate tax when Mark dies due to the marital deduction. But because Minnesota does not allow for a portability election to be made after the first spouse's death, Minnie now has a $10 million estate, and when she dies, she'll only have her own $3 million exemption amount to use, causing about $1 million in Minnesota estate tax to be due after Minnie dies. Because Mark lumped his entire estate into Minnie's estate, Mark's estate was not able to utilize any of its $3 million Minnesota state estate tax exemption, and the couple together was only able to shield $3 million from the Minnesota estate tax instead of $6 million. Now, part of the solution involves arranging Mark's and Minnie's estates so that when the first spouse dies, the Minnesota estate tax exemption amount goes into a trust for the surviving spouse in a way that those assets will not be lumped into the estate of the surviving spouse. Failing to set things up to make sure each spouse in Minnesota uses their Minnesota estate tax exemption amount of $3 million, failing to do that can cost a family about $400,000 in unnecessary Minnesota state estate tax. Now, our national estate planning law firm called America's Estate Planning Lawyers provides estate planning legal services to clients around the country through me and our in-house estate planning lawyers, along with the co-counsel lawyer relationships that we have in more than 40 states. If you'd like, click the link in the description to set up your estate planning design meeting. See you around.